Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey, the podcast where we explore how seasoned entrepreneurs and executives build strong, scalable companies. I'm your host, Peter Santry, a former Wall Street exec turned leadership team coach, and today we're diving into the world of retail. My guest is Sara, Chief Operating Officer of Danice Stores, a 50-store chain that's been serving women with stylish apparel, footwear, and accessories for over 90 years. BJ has spent more than 2 decades helping Danice grow from 11 stores to 50 locations, and in his current role, he oversees the complex operations of a fast-moving retail business. We'll talk about what it takes to scale a family-run business, the unique challenges of being a COO, how Danice navigates rising labor costs, and what BJ sees ahead for the business. So welcome to the show, BJ.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Good. So let's jump right in. So for those that don't know Danice Stores, can you just give us a little introduction about who you are and number of stores and something like that?
My pleasure. So my name is BJ Sara. I'm COO of Danice Stores.
Oh, Danice.
Proper pronunciation. Well, I've heard it many, many ways. We operate around 50 stores throughout the New York metro area, including Long Island, New York, all the 5 boroughs, New Jersey, Philadelphia, down to South Florida. We serve lower income, lower economic communities. It is ladies, urban apparel, footwear, and accessories. The average price per unit is around $7. The average unit sale would be 3 pieces per sale. We do about almost 7 million transactions a year.
Wow. Okay. And you've been there 20 years. You had a financial services career before this. And you've had many different roles at the company. And I guess 3 years ago, you landed as the COO. And how did that varied background prepare you for stepping into really running the operations of the company?
It was really that I grew with the growth of the company. So I started at the very bottom, literally clerking, but then became a store manager and succeeded, and became a district manager and succeeded, and were able to coach and grow my replacement as a store manager. As we expanded the footprint, we then had more stores, needed district managers, which I was able to help coach and grow, ultimately leading to regional manager, then of course into vice president of retail. But the natural progression from that would be COO as we reach certain milestones. And with each fresh opportunity, the challenge really is finding someone to do the role that I did so that I can move forward. But part of my success has always been to coach the staff beneath me. I don't like to use the word beneath me, but the staff that I would be working with, coach them so that they can succeed, have upward mobility, make some more money, and develop a career for themselves. But ultimately, it served Danice Stores because we would have more managers sticking around longer, ultimately possibly becoming a district manager.
Right. And building really a network for you to really start to manage the company, because a lot of the people were elevated through the ranks through you for your, as the company grew, but also you were able to elevate people, as you say, beneath you, but up and to higher levels in the company.
The reason why that's so great for us is because we wrote our own handbook. We have a way of doing it our way. Of course, retail is retail and apparel is apparel, but some retailers merchandise by vendor, some merchandise by color, some merchandise even by price, some just use dump tables, some have merchandising teams. We don't do that just because of the nature of our business. It's such a fast-paced business. We turn our inventory 16 times a year.
Wow.
So our managers don't just manage the traffic, they're actually merchandising. So throughout the day, there's a team. When I say a team, it could be a team of 1, 2, or 3, opening boxes, ticketing the product, putting sensors on it, putting it on rolling racks, getting it out to the floor, and the manager plus an associate, they're merchandising the walls. we don't use planograms. So our managers have to be trained how we want the walls to look. When you walk into store number 1, store number 30, they're going to look very different. They're going to look similar because of the training, but the same product is not going to be on each wall. So it takes a lot of coaching and training to have someone be confident enough to handle those challenges.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's a bit of a unique way to do it from what I can tell, what I know. I'm always interested in that role or that leap up to the C-suite and a COO role, because the COO role has got sort of a dynamic. You have to really blend in with the CEO, and you have to be able to mix and implement their vision and do the things that the CEO doesn't necessarily want to do, but each CEO has got different strengths and weaknesses. So when you sat down, how did you work that out with Barry Group in terms of how you decided to do it?
It's interesting because I know many other COOs or along these types of positions. And there's a reason why there's a CEO and why he has been CEO for all these years, decades really. They're built differently than COOs a lot of the time.
Right.
And the COO has to be uh, malleable, I think is a good word to use. And we need to adjust on the fly because the CEO really dictates what he or they expect or demand even. And it's our job to execute. Of course, after being together for so many years, you might be able to start reading their brains or reading their thoughts, which I try to do. It doesn't always happen, but
Right.
try to do that. But really, most CEOs, the ones that I've met and I've worked, like you said, I was in finance and I've known a couple of real heavy hitters. They're really strong-willed and it's their way. I don't want to say it's their way or the highway because that's a silly thing to say these days, but it's their way. And I need to then translate that to the modern employee because that doesn't exist anymore. We have to be able to entertain our staff or I really should say manage our staff to prevent issue. So they have to execute for us based on our guidelines and our protocols. But there's a very sensitive line on how you approach them, and how you train them and how you coach them. It has become more sensitive. And the older I want to be sensitive with that too, because I'm 50, he's 73, but the older guys seem to not really appreciate that as much as they should. But it's the reality today that the current employee base has a sense of entitlement a little bit, but also really reads the handbook and the New York State laws or whatever state you're operating in. And if you're allowed or allotted a certain amount of sick days, they want all of them. And if you're allotted a certain amount of PTO, they want all of it. And that's healthy and great. But the way I grew up was, unless I'm dying, I'm showing up.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't need that vacation because I want the time. I want whatever it was. I'm going to give you 110%, not just 100%. And I think things have shifted the other way.
Right. And so not only do you have to sort of translate the vision but you also have to really know how to communicate it most effectively to the workforce that of today, which is got a different, as you said, it's just different than what we grew up with.
Right. I mean, it's hard, at least for me, it's hard to speak eloquently about that because I have a real passionate side to my opinion on that. But you're recording it, so I have to be careful.
So just getting granular in terms of divvying up the roles, was Barry's sort of view to be, was he the merchant? Was he the person that was going to, how did what did you say what did you say? This is me and this is yours. What did you go through that process and where did it end up?
Very little of that, to be honest. He is the lead buyer. He buys, his product is just north of 40% of the total volume. And that's the ladies junior category. Within that category, it breaks down into many classes, but it's junior apparel. And that's 40% of our business. Then there's plus, women's plus. There's the Missy category, footwear, accessories, hair, cosmetics, intimates. So add up all these small categories, and that's the balance of the business. But his primary role, where he spends most of his hours, is reading his reports and in the market. So every day, 4 days a week, he's in the market, studying his reports, reordering, buying new, negotiating, making new deals. He has vendor relationships for decades upon decades. And he's given orders with the same vendors for, it could be 30, 40 years, and then of course, new vendors. But he has really built a strong relationship with his vendors. His primary position is buying. At the end of the day, he could spend an hour in the office and be the CFO, because
Right.
that's how he wants to operate it. So that's how it's going to be. Then on Friday, he might visit a bunch of stores. It could be 2 stores, 5 stores. And then he puts on his merchant hat, because he will not leave a store without changing something. And he's trained everyone to do the same. I won't leave I make sure that when I leave a store, it's better than when I walked in. Even if the store is close to perfect, I want to find something that I can improve. But that's what Barry does. And Barry is very specific on his instructions. I like this here, I like that there, rotate this, bring this up. He was raised in this business. It's his grandfather's business. Started in 1934 on 14th Street. So he takes every minute very seriously, as he should, as we all do.
And I love the fact that he'll devote a day to either, talking to customers, or at least being in a store or two to really take everything in and make sure that he's current and got a hand on the pulse.
Well, Peter, I'll expand on that just for a minute. Friday is his days to visit multiple stores. And Saturday afternoon he'll spend 3 hours as a cashier and really talk to the customer. But more than that is that you see what's selling with each customer. Of course, the reports show plenty. It shows great detail. But when you're actually wrapping that customer, that transaction, something's going to trigger in your mind Monday morning. I sold 3 of these in 15 minutes. It dives in deeper than what the print shows.
Yeah. And getting down and getting with the employees and doing, being on the floor like that is got to be inspirational when he's doing that on a Saturday afternoon. Very, very interesting. So you show up 20 years ago and you're 11 stores, and then, all of a sudden you go in the span of 14, 15 years, or maybe all 20, to 50 stores. What was the opportunity? What did you see? And what drove that explosive growth?
So it was multiple areas of real interest, but it was really before the internet. It was before the competition that we have today. So we were able to see busy urban streets with bus stops, or busy urban streets with subways, and real heavy pedestrian foot traffic. And that was really clearly seen throughout the boroughs of New York, because that was the heart of our business, was Brooklyn and the Bronx. If you stopped any woman or any random woman in Brooklyn and said, "You ever hear of Danice stores?" They'd say, "Danice, the $10 store?" That's what it would be. And we would say, "Okay, yes, that one." But that's how popular it became. And it was really in the early 2000s that there was explosive growth. It started in the 90s because my father knew Barry, and when he took over, there was only 3 stores, because it was his family's business. And Barry built it from 3 to 11 in, I think, a decade by himself. But then when he started to build the infrastructure and I came in, it really took off from there, because he had some trusted employees that had vision. So we were exploring the New York expansion deep into Suffolk County, all over Nassau County, the 5 boroughs, and then into New Jersey. And we were in Jersey City and Newark and Elizabeth, and many other cities in New York. And then I challenged him to expand out of state, which of course meant southern New Jersey, but into Philadelphia. So I then studied all the different markets in Philadelphia and then continued down into South Florida. But it really stemmed from having relationships. It always goes back to the relationships with the vendors, because as a buyer, I built relationships with vendors for a mere 24 years. And they would tell me, they would report to me, maybe they're not supposed to, but this competitor, it will remain nameless. This competitor is doing great in this city. This competitor is opening here. They're re-signing their lease here. You guys have to check it out. I can't believe you're not there. So I brought it to Barry. I said, we have to just look. We don't have to sign the lease today. Let's look. I'll do the work. I'll do all the heavy lifting. And we went to Philadelphia, and there was 4 or 5 streets that easily we could have put stores, easily. And we started making deals. And I continued that by shopping my competition. And when you shop competition, there's really a science to it. How many associates do they have on the floor? How many registers are they running? That's just for apparel. I go into, if it's in a strip center, what's the draw? If it's a supermarket, well, how many registers are open?
Yeah.
Look at the inventory on the shelves. Is it packed, or are they not expecting a real rush? There's a lot of ways that you can see the traffic flow of a center or of a street without them reporting to the landlord.
Right.
And
Right.
I use that information.
Right. Right. So it was you could see that you're going to generalize that urban pedestrian foot traffic close to public transportation. Those opportunities were out there, and you decided to do it. Did you make any mistakes in terms of when you did expand? Were there any duds that you just said, we thought this was going to be a home run, and it didn't end up being, or did most of them, or just were there any mistakes, I guess?
The answer is there's always going to be mistakes. And if I said anything else, you would know I'm lying to you.
Yes, right.
There were mistakes before I arrived, and there's been mistakes since I've arrived. And there's been mistakes that I have solely been responsible for, and some that I haven't been responsible for. But a real challenge is knowing when to pull the plug. Because as an operator and as a merchant, you give your all to figure out a way to succeed there. Maybe it's different door merchandise. You change managers. You change signage. You change lighting. I've tried many different things. And other than marketing, because really marketing, it doesn't behoove us to spend on marketing when our marketing is our windows and our front doors.
Right.
That's why we pay the rent we do for our bus stops and for our subways and for our heavy pedestrian traffic intersections.
Right.
Because if a woman is coming home after work or on lunch and she's passing our window or passing our door and she sees something in the door, I hope she's coming in. Our conversion rate has always been very strong.
Right.
So that's our marketing. And it's not loss leaders. We'll never have a loss leader. Every single item will not be purchased unless it's at a certain margin. So we have no loss leaders. We just provide great value. That's always been our secret. But I think I took this to a direction.
Right. Well, it's so inevitably you picked a few lemons and you ended up having to pull the plug, and you tried everything and a few of them, but you probably overwhelmingly had, you knew what your site criteria were, and they generally have worked. And as long as you had that location, you were doing well. And
interestingly, Peter, when we have had the duds, it was not the stores that we swung for the fences on. It was for the further subs. It was the lower rent, lower volume, that it made no sense to keep, because you would buy for them, spend the time and the effort negotiating the deals, allocating to the store, sending the product, handle the logistics. The manager and staff would just sweat getting everything out timely, and it wouldn't turn.
Right.
And then there's more effort in transferring it out, issuing the transfer. The manager has to work again, packing the transfers, logistics to the other stores. So you would be in this cycle, and at the end of the year, and you were making the stores doing under $1 million. So what did we just do all this for?
Yeah.
And then you go back to, is it the manager? Is it this? Is it that? And then you're racking your brain. Ultimately, those were the duds, not the ones that you swing for the fences.
Yeah.
Because you put the best managers there, you give them the best product, and you have the foot traffic, and you succeed.
Yeah. And you know, retail's all about location, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And
Right.
yeah, and people pay up for it. And if the traffic's there, you're going to succeed. So the other big thing, other than location, and especially today in urban environments, is that you know, labor's become a huge issue. Minimum wage has become a huge issue. Many states have, or cities and localities have moved up labor rates. And how have you coped with that increase in your input costs? Obviously, rent is a huge part of it, but labor is another part of it.
Peter, this is the single biggest challenge that I have, because not that many years ago, minimum wage was $5.50. So
Yeah,
over the years, it's now $16.50 in New York City. Over the years, as it has incrementally increased, this is probably not the best thing to say, but I don't get any more productivity because I'm paying them more.
right, right,
I mean,
right.
that's reality. It's a real challenge because payroll is a percentage of sales. And if it exceeds that, and rent is a percentage of sales, and you have your model and your structure, when you start to exceed that, your net numbers, your bottom line starts to evaporate.
Yeah,
And you're only in business. This is a not-for-profit. This is a for-profit business.
yeah,
And the sole proprietor expects to see a return on investment. And payroll specifically is the number one controllable expense. We used to have a detailed chart, part of our opening checklist, of where to assign our staff. It would be a door person and a front right quadrant, front left quadrant, all the way back, and stock guys and cashiers. Doesn't operate like that anymore. We are almost at skeleton staff in every store. The A-level stores, of course, get a little bit more because they can afford it. Each store individually has their payroll based on their sales, so their schedules might be deeper than others. But it is the single biggest challenge to get the product onto the floor, to have it properly processed, to have it merchandised properly. And when you have sales associates on the floor, they sell, they assist customers. But on top of that, they act as deterrents from shrink. Because if someone
yes,
is coming in to pilfer and they see a bunch of associates, it deters them or makes them move into a different section, and maybe the manager will spot them. It's a deterrent. So less associates on the floor is directly contributes to higher shrink.
yeah, yeah. And but you're managing to a payroll number, and so by definition, fewer employees. And you know, it's the law of economics. You raise the
That's right.
price on something, and it's gonna, you know, people are gonna use less of it, and then you have to counteract the shrink issue, which is, you know, something that's becomes an extra expense as well. So okay, and then in terms of, you know, you mentioned kind of the, I guess you call the psychographics of the current generation or the current labor force. What's been the, have you experienced with the skeleton staff a higher turnover ratio, or in terms of your retention numbers, have they gone down, or is it maintained the same?
My retention of store managers has always been very strong. We have managers here
Okay.
for decades and decades. I have a couple managers, believe it or not, that are here more than 40 years, and then a couple 20s and 30s, many 10 years. Our managers are loyal and dedicated and work their rear ends off and really believe in the culture, wherein our hourly associates If there were, I'm just going to pull some numbers out. Let's say there were 600 or there were 600 positions. We probably had 2,500 W-2s last year. So it's a revolving door of associates. And it affects us deeply because of the time and dollars spent in training them, the time and dollars of not having them trained
Right.
until they're trained, because there's two sides of that.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, there's productivity and efficiency, which I happen to think is my greatest strength. And I really think it's a matter of knowing how to talk to the person you're talking to. And I say it that way because everyone is different. And I have to speak to someone differently than I might speak to someone else in a different store. But finding that way to connect so that they can buy in. Because what I really believe in is that for the same effort, you could do it right or you could do it wrong, but it takes the same effort. So most people want to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I explain why it's right versus why it's wrong. And that really often hits. If you just say, you got to do it this way because this is the way you got to do it, you get the eye roll. No one cares. But if you explain it, if you take that extra couple minutes and explain it, I've seen success with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and I've done that with associates up through managers, and that's how I think the retention is built.
yes. And you, in that dialogue and explaining, you're also they're listening and giving you feedback, and they feel a little bit bought into the way this is being presented to them, and have some ownership to it.
The other side of that, though, is that's not everyone. There are going to be several. That's why I've had so many W-2s where for the same 1650, because we do push our staff, we have a lot to do. There are probably easier jobs either to the right or to the left of our doors for the same 1650. So they're probably constantly looking for the same pay, if not more, but for a lesser
output
job.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other big item, but your turnover, 16 times turnover of your inventory is an incredibly, great number for a retailer, and you should be commended. But in terms of the apparel business, a lot of that industry has moved overseas. We all know what's going on with imports. There's tariffs. There's all kinds of other stuff that's also can be raising your costs. How is that transmitted? I mean, it's too hard to keep score, frankly, of which who's tariffed where and from where, what countries and everything. But how are you coping with that uncertainty?
Well, it's a multi-leveled issue in that, well, today, most of the vast majority of our product is from China. And today that's 33%. But what I've seen is that the current inventory
The tariff is 33%.
33% tariff.
It's more than that of your total inventory, right?
Right.
Okay.
So what I've seen is that because I speak with dozens and dozens of vendors per week, but we have hundreds of vendors, their current inventory has become a commodity because the replacement costs have gone up. So that then creates less deals because they don't want less for their commodity. They want the same or more, and to replace it will cost more. So the challenge has been finding real deals, but that's unless you're resourceful. There's always more product than you can write. But I was at many vendors today. I was at 4 different appointments today, and each of those 4, and they were different categories, my prices from what I bought earlier in the spring and summer than today have not risen.
Is that right?
And I was fascinated in the explanation of all 4 because I knew I was coming on to talk to you today, but I talk about this all day, every day. And
Right.
I ask whoever I can because it's part of my job. I want to know as much as I can. And they all had similar explanations, but it was really that if it's 33% of a tariff, and by theory, 10% will be eaten by the factory, 10% will be eaten by the vendor, 10% will be eaten by the retailer or the consumer, it really hasn't come into play.
Mm.
Because factory orders are down. This is the latest, right from today. Factory orders are down, so they're looking to either maintain or build new relationships with manufacturers, vendors, like the people I saw today. So they're eating the price or giving them a sharper price. And on top of that, giving better quality goods.
Mm,
Because what I bought today versus what I bought earlier in the spring and summer, I got better quality product today for the same exact price.
yeah. It's fascinating to know that, the chain is taking, taking less along the way, and each person is sharing in the burden, which I think is fascinating. And the question of how long that can go on is interesting. But for now, I've seen that with other CEOs I've been talking to, even in areas like in steel, even where prices are, for that specific commodity have been targeted for increases. And it ends up that that a lot of the people from the factory to the importers and everybody else are taking pieces of that, and it has not shown up in consumer price inflation yet. And it's
What I see affect the prices more than tariffs is shipping, the container prices. That's what I've always heard, and it's hard to argue that. They say, listen, it's costing me X more to bring it in. It's hard really to negotiate out of that,
yeah,
especially because if it's brought in on container A, but I'm doing a reorder with container X because it's, several later, um, it's a constant negotiation on price.
yeah, yeah, the freight.
And most vendors believe that if they get me to agree to a $4.50 cost, but I go back for a reorder and I know that the container prices have come down, I'm going in for $3.50.
Right. Yeah, you're watching it. Well, at the price points you're at, very well, regardless, you would do that. Very interesting. So we've kind of dealt with a massive amount of uncertainty, between labor, between tariffs, the economy as a whole, new administration. As you look forward, tell me how you're feeling about your prospects and where you see the store and the chain headed.
I think that it's very challenging. I think that you're going to see a lot of contraction throughout retail. We're not expanding, we're contracting. We're looking for short-term leases, just licenses that we could operate because the cost is less and the exposure is less. Um, our in our history, our most profitable stores have been pop-ups or licenses because we were able to get locations that we normally wouldn't be able to afford because we couldn't sign a long-term lease. So we were able to sign a 6-month guarantee with a 30-day kick just because it's such a spectacular address. We needed to be there and we did phenomenally well there. Not enough to sign a permanent lease just because of the structure of the business. But some of
Right.
those have been our most profitable stores. So that's the expansion that we're looking to do. But we're contracting as far as long-term leases. I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see that throughout retail. I think you're going to continue to see real growth in the big box. Walmart's going to see even more growth and overflow. Burlington and TJ and Ross stores, these level guys are still going to have real growth. I hear it from my vendors. I see it myself because I shop them every day, and they're taking market share from my level business. Consumers believe that they're getting value there. I don't. I know how that business operates. I know that there isn't true value, but the consumer does, and that's the most important thing, obviously. I think there's going to be many more retailers filing for either 7 or 11. And you're going to see that through the malls or in the streets. I think it's going to be a very challenging next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that it sounds like that will provide you with short-term lease opportunities to pick up some real estate and get some locations that might otherwise not be out there. And so
In a perfect world, it sure does. Unless that, unless we're really struggling And then we have to, which
Right.
without divulging details, we're not having a stellar year. This is a
Yeah.
brutal year.
Yeah.
And everyone I talk to, misery loves company. If
Yeah.
everyone was killing it and I was telling Peter that I'm struggling, it would be something that I'm doing wrong. But if everyone is saying that, then it's really industry wide. And that's what I'm finding.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So difficult environment. Hopefully the economy can start growing again and the uncertainty gets in the rearview mirror. Maybe there's a silver lining behind that. But appreciate your candor. So if somebody wants to know more about Danice stores, how do they get in touch or with you or find you in the marketplace?
That's pretty easy. Well, I'm sure most of these guys have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I'm always available and reachable and approachable on LinkedIn. I have a couple thousand followers and I'm actually building that base. I'm starting to do more of these podcasts and panels because I really enjoy talking about retail. I'm a passionate retailer. I breathe it. I don't think you can do what I do and not be
Yeah.
passionate about it. I work 6 days a week for the last 24 years. So and logging a lot of miles. So you have to be pretty passionate about that. But through
Yeah.
LinkedIn is a great way. We do not have an e-commerce site currently. We have. It hasn't been great. So we're not operating it today, but
Mhm.
we'll see how AI can help us with that.
Right.
But of
Right.
course, there is a landing page of Danice stores with our corporate address and number. But the easiest way to contact me directly is through LinkedIn.
Right. Right. And as you said, your window and your short storefront is your advertisement. And
That's
that's
right.
and
You can
get
pop into any of our stores and say hi.
yeah, good, good. Okay, well, thank you, BJ. I appreciate the candor and looking at the marketplace and I thank the audience for watching. And until next time, we'll see you on the entrepreneur's journey.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Peter.